Good morning, everyone. There's a lot of conversation out there around what you're supposed to do. Very little information is available out there in the world on what you're not supposed to do, right? There's a lot of conversation around how to build a startup, how to create a product, how to create a solution, how to go about solving a problem, how to make a billion-dollar company. You're going to find an endless supply of information if you want to search for something like that. But what I sort of found in my humble career is that there's very little conversation around what you're not supposed to do when you're building solutions, right? Nobody tells us that. But the point is, all of the success stories that you hear, that's less than 5% of everything that is attempted, right? 95% of startups, of products out there, they fail in the market, and very little information is usually discussed about it. One of the reasons is because failure is looked down upon, right? It's just the way we are brought up. And it's not our fault. It's in me as well. It's very ingrained in us, where we are scared of failure, so we don't want to talk about failures. But I kind of feel it is very important for you to get that fear out of your heads, because when you try something new, you will fail in some capacity for sure, right? So it's better to get it out of your head, get over that fear. But also, second, because it's very important for you to know what you're not supposed to do out there, just so you can avoid, some of the mistakes that other people have already done before you, right? Now, with all of that introduction that you just heard about me, I started my first company when I was 19 years old. That is true. So I was a student entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was in third sem. So I kind of understand what you guys are going through here. I understand the challenges. I understand the limitations. I understand what life feels like. I built a company when I was 19. But what is also not in my bio is that I also failed at my first startup when I was 22, right? Of course, I've been a successful entrepreneur after that. I've built like 3 companies. They've all been successful. I've been working globally. All of that stuff is true. But I did experience very early failure, and that taught me a lot of lessons. And what I hope to do is share some of those lessons with you so that you don't repeat my mistakes. The majority of the work that I have been doing is to build sustainable communities and businesses around there using a framework called human-centered design. And I'll be speaking more about what human-centered design is, how do you use it, and how is it really relevant to eYantra and to the projects that you guys are working on. But some of the projects that me and my team, we've been involved in working, just to set some context so you know where I'm coming from and what kind of questions you can ask me, is, for example, our team has been using the tools I'll be sharing with you to fight malaria in Mozambique. So those pictures there, that's my team. That's our team in 2017 in Mozambique, where we were working with this rural hospital in a district. Mozambique is a country in southeastern Africa, just for geographical context, where we were contacted by a rural hospital and a non-profit that wanted to solve the problem of high mortality rate due to malaria, which basically means that a lot of people there were dying due to malaria. It was higher than the average for the sub-Saharan region. Sub-Saharan region is the region below the Sahara Desert in Africa. And we found that to be a very interesting problem, because malaria is a perfectly diagnosable and treatable disease, right? Unlike AIDS, which is diagnosable but not treatable. Malaria is diagnosable and treatable. So we found that to be a very interesting problem. This is something that I'm going to be going back to in this particular workshop as well. Just kind of show you one project from start to finish, what it looked like, how we executed it, how did we find the problem worth solving, how did we also make sure that our solution is sustainable on 3 metrics, which is people, profit, and planet, right? Not just sustainable in terms of profit, but also sustainable in terms of people, and also sustainable in terms of planet and just sustainability at large. So that's something that we've been working on. I have also been involved in literally making agriculture cool. Most of us think of being or getting into agriculture after retirement. We don't consider it to be a just a valid career option, right? And this is true for most parts of the world, where talent is trying to get out of agriculture. Nobody is trying to get into agriculture, right? Including farming families that have been in the field literally for generations. Even the younger generations are not trying to be in agriculture. They're trying to get out of agriculture. You guys have any idea about the amount of pressure on our food systems? Let me give you an example. You guys like coffee? Most of you like coffee. Do you have any guesses on the amount of water that is required for a single cup of cappuccino? On average, you need 150 liters of water for a single cup of cappuccino, which means from growing the beans to harvesting it, including the supply chain, when the coffee finally reaches your hand, the total amount of water that is consumed in that entire process end to end, on average, is almost 150 liters. And I'm just talking about coffee in this case, right? Can you imagine the amount of pressure that our food systems are under when it comes to the other crops? It's insane. In fact, the pressure is so much that if you were to convert all of the available land on this planet into agriculture land, right, you would still not be able to feed everybody in the world beyond the year 2050. It's not possible. Given our current agriculture and food production practices, it is just not possible to feed everyone on this planet the way our population is increasing, the way consumption is increasing. It is not possible to feed every single person on this planet 3 good meals a day beyond the year 2050. It's just not possible. But we decided to do something about it. So we actually set up our own School of Agriculture Innovations and Agri-Tech and Food Tech in Kenya. So that's our team in Kenya, where we are literally trying to make agriculture cool. It's not considered to be a cool domain to get into right now. But we're trying to see if we can get in investments and create farmer-owned but student-driven innovation. So what that means is, आपको किसान बनने का जरूरत नहीं है for you to drive innovations in agriculture, right? You can still create innovations that are owned by farmers, but driven by students like us, because we have the power to innovate, right? So that's what we've been working on as well. I have also been involved in working with doctors, healthcare professionals, cancer patients in Southeast Asia. So that is me in South Korea, Thailand, and I don't remember where this is, I think Philippines. HPV is human papilloma virus. It is a sexually transmitted virus that causes a lot of stuff, but one of the leading causes of cervical cancer, right? It causes other forms of cancer as well, not just cervical cancer, certain strains of the HPV. It is sexually transmitted. In fact, almost 90% of cancer cases are caused due to the human papilloma virus, and 70% of patients who suffer from cervical cancer do not make it out alive. Right? So cervical cancer is just a cancer indication that has a high mortality rate. But the point is, I don't know if you guys have heard of the cervical cancer vaccine, have you? Yeah? There's been a lot of push from our government as well now to include the HPV and include that as a part of the national immunization program. So there is actually a vaccine for HPV that can help prevent cervical cancer. But the point is that most people do not know about the vaccine, or the vaccine is also expensive and there's a lot of other related issues. So what we were doing is using the tools that I'll be sharing with you all to identify what are the challenges faced by cancer patients, cervical cancer patient, but also to look at what could be potential prevention strategies and techniques to prevent the spread of HPV. So me and my team, we were involved in tracking the spread of HPV across Southeast Asia. I have also been involved in working with refugees. So this is me in Egypt in 2019, where again, all of the frameworks and tools that I'll be sharing with you was used to design sustainable living solutions for slum refugees in Egypt as well. Now, here is something that I really, really believe in, which is the shortest distance between two people. Any two people anywhere out there in the world is always a story. And it doesn't matter who the two people are. It could be between you as an entrepreneur and your first customer. It could be between you as a product designer and the user of your first product. It could be between you as a professor and your students. It could also be between you and somebody you have a crush on. Doesn't matter. Shortest distance between two people is always a story. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it is very important for you to not just be good engineers and innovators, but also good storytellers, right? And when I say good storytellers, what I mean is that the world really needs authentic, data-driven stories right now, because people usually relate first with your story, with your narrative, before they make up their mind whether they want to use your product or collaborate with you or not. So it's very important for you to acquire that skill of storytelling as well, but also just put your stories out there in the world. How does this apply to this particular workshop and just eYantra or just life in general is that If you guys are working on projects, make sure that you document it and put it out there in the world. Be as authentic as possible when you are sharing your stories and when you're sharing your stories about yourself especially, because that's how the world finds out about you and that's how you become more relatable. I grew up in this really, really small town, okay, which is right there where you see the location pin. The region is also very popular for tea estates. So a lot of tea in the country is grown in that particular region. In fact, my family worked in the tea estates. But the region is also very popular for something else that very few people know about. This is what traffic looks like in that region, by the way. There are 2 elephant corridors in India, one in the northeast where I'm from, and the other one is in the Nilgiris in Kerala, right? So 2 elephant corridors. Now, the thing about elephants is that they always stick to the same path of travel, right? So the elephant, it's called an elephant corridor also because the paths that an elephant uses for travel usually remain the same and they're passed down generation after generation, right? So they tend to stick to the same path of travel, which leads to a lot of man-animal conflict. So it doesn't really matter what you build on an elephant pathway. Like you could build a solar-powered hospital, you could build like a school, you could build an e-yantra lab. Doesn't matter. If it falls in an elephant pathway, an elephant is going to walk right through it, right? And that happens a lot in that region. Elephants are also matriarchal from just a societal structure perspective. Thank God, which is why they're pretty intelligent as a species. They've also evolved. Like, for example, elephants now cross the railway tracks in that region by putting their foot on the railway track to feel oncoming vibrations and then deciding whether it's safe to cross or not. So there's a lot of this stuff happening there. But one of the only things that can make an elephant change its path of travel, and I'm not joking, is local alcohol. There's a local alcohol that's brewed in that region called Hadia. It's made by fermenting rice. What happens is when elephants smell Hadia or the local alcohol in the air, they change their path of travel. They walk right in the direction of wherever the alcohol is being brewed. They drink the alcohol. They get drunk. I'm not making it up. It's a true story. They drink the alcohol, they get drunk, and sometimes they end up also, losing their balance as they do that. The humans that, of course, brewed the alcohols, they hate it, that elephants are gate crashing the party. So they, attack the elephants to chase them away. But then the elephants, they're too drunk, so they can't retaliate, but they remember who attacked them because they have photographic memory, right? So they remember who attacked them, so they run away, right? But then they come back a few days later to take revenge, not to party, right? And they come and attack the houses of the humans that had attacked them the last time. Humans get pissed, they chase the elephants away, elephants go back, they again come back to drink alcohol, get drunk, get attacked by elephants, run away, then they come back for revenge. And it's been happening for generation after generation. It's been happening for a very, very long time. Nobody really knows about this drunk elephant story, and you will never find out about the drunk elephant story unless you actually visit the place or you talk to somebody from the place, right? In this case, it is me. It's so weird. Metaphorically speaking, in your projects, there is always going to be a drunk elephant factor. What that means is, I guarantee you this, when you work on projects for real people, solving real world problems, there is going to be a factor which is so big and obvious, like a drunk elephant, but also so weird. You will never see it coming unless you actually visit the region and you spend some time there and try to understand the local context. But this drunk elephant factor, metaphorically speaking, has the potential to break your project apart and you'll never see it coming, right? So the drunk elephant, so to speak, in your projects is basically a factor that exists out there in the field. It is so big and obvious once you visit the field, but you will never ever find out about it sitting in your classrooms, behind your laptops, asking questions to ChatGPT. You're not going to find out about it because that is what passes as research for most people these days. Please, that's not research, guys, when you're working on real world problems, but you'll never find out about it. But it is your job to find out about it, right? It exists, I guarantee you. Just like in this case, if you were to set up like a solar powered, hospital, but if it fell on an elephant pathway or if it was created close to a region where local alcohol is brewed, it doesn't matter how much time you spend optimizing the efficiency of your solar panel or designing a business model for it. An elephant doesn't care about those things. It's going to walk right through it. So it is your job to find out about these factors. And we're going to be talking a lot about how do you find the drunk elephant in your projects. The region that I grew up in, so remote that the first pizza place opened in 2020. The first internet cafe opened in 1999 when I was like 7, 8 years old or something. Which is very powerful because there was one internet cafe in that region, right, which opened up. Thankfully, India is one of the countries that got very early access to internet. We don't always appreciate that, but the first internet appeared in the country in 1997 thanks to MTNL, which is like game changing, right? We were one of the first countries post-independence to get internet that early. It kind of changed the entire socio-economic fabric in the region because of one cyber cafe. All of the youth, like my generation, we suddenly had access to information which would otherwise not be available to us, right? So we finally got a chance to see what life looks like, in other parts of the world. What are people studying at MIT and Stanford? We got access to free and open courses. We just got access to things like how do you build a website, how do you build, an app and stuff like that. So it kind of really changed because information was so powerful and available for free. In fact, we were like one of the first generation of people to go abroad, study, work abroad, all of that kind of stuff. And it happened, like in my opinion, it happened because of the internet revolution that came in so early. One internet cafe changed everything, right? Because of this, in my head, like internet literally was more powerful than pizza. And because of that, I had this notion and an internal philosophy that I carried forward in life for a very long time, which is if you can give people open tools and if you can teach them how to use it, they can really overcome whatever barriers it is, that they currently face. Geographic, socioeconomic, doesn't matter. Please do not build a product or something which is in search of a problem. मेरे को लगा था मेरा product life में best है, right? Like I just made it, best tech मैंने डाल दिया उसमें, right? I was like सबको चाहिए होगा ये. I was so obsessed with what I was building that I forgot to ask the question कि what problem does it solve and who does it really solve it for? Do they even want a solution for what I was building? Do not end up building a product in search of a problem. This is a mistake that almost everyone makes, especially when you're a first-time entrepreneur. Please, please do not do that. You're already setting yourself up for failure. You'll not be able to find the metaphorical drunk elephant. You'll not be able to see factors which will lead to your subsequent failure, perhaps, out there in the field. The other thing is, there's a lot of stuff that we want our products sometimes to do for our users, right? बहुत सारे features सोचते हैं हम लोग AI डालेंगे, right? We want to put an LLM, whatever. But you really have to understand that your users don't always care about all of that stuff. Let me demonstrate this point using an example here. Question for everyone. Does anybody know what the backend tech stack of Netflix is? Anyone here knows what Netflix uses in the backend? I also don't know. And that's okay. You know why? Because we are all consumers of these applications. We are all users of these applications. We don't care what Netflix uses in the backend. We don't care whether they're using AI to serve us entertainment or Vaibhav is sitting there personally like showing you recommendations of movies. No one cares about that stuff, right? That's not why you're paying $699 for a subscription fee. You're paying it because Netflix solves a very specific problem that you have, which is after a horrible day in college, जहाँ assignment में आपको बहुत कम grades मिले, आपका breakup हो गया, your teacher has scolded you, and your father has also called, and when you are out with your friends partying, you just want Netflix to show you the perfect recommendation that can take that stress away. That's all you want Netflix. You don't care how Netflix does it, right? As a user, you don't care about what tech is being used in the backend. What you care about is whether your problem is being solved or not in the most efficient way. But if you are creating that particular product, then it's important for you to know these things. And it's this divide, where innovators or product designers and developers do not understand the user perspective, right? And where users do not care about the tech. I hear a lot of first-time entrepreneurs telling me stuff like, I am creating an AI-enabled app. Even if you don't say AI-enabled, it means the same thing as a user, right? It has no meaning out there in the world. It does not. It's unless it's a marketing phrase. So you really have to understand and look at the problems from your user's perspective and not your perspective. And we always do that, right? If we just got a certification in React, हम हर चीज में React लगाते हैं. We are like, we'll make the best React app on this planet. but you got to be tech agnostic, right? Which is figuring out the best tech stack to solve the problem that you're trying to solve instead of forcing the same thing just because you are an expert at it. Make sense? Right? It's a very humbling experience for you to do that. Culture is everything in a startup, which is, it doesn't matter how good your business strategy is, how good your pricing model is, how much time you spent on getting your product features right. At the end of the day, success or failure typically and usually is determined by the culture of your company. And I hear a lot of first time entrepreneurs say कि culture क्या है, ये तो बाद में देख लेंगे जब team होएगा, अभी अपन बस 2 लोग हैं. Even if you're a solo founder, the way you work is going to define what the culture of your company is. Do you guys believe in this concept of being your own boss? That's why you want to be an entrepreneur. You don't want to report to someone, you want to be your own boss. Something very interesting I realized after having been an entrepreneur almost all my life is when you're your own boss, you are also your own employee. People don't realize that. पता है? आप अगर अपने boss हो, तो आप खुद का employee भी हो. And if you're a terrible boss, you will have a horrible work experience. You will have no one to blame it on. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that a culture is everything. It's not just about being about your own boss. You're literally employee number 1 in your own company. You get to design what the rule and the work experience is going to be like. Most people don't pay attention to this. Finally brings me to a very important point, relevant to you guys and your projects, anything you do in life, which is please pick a team that you can pick a fight with. ठीक है? अगर आप डर रहे हो आपके टीम मेंबर से लड़ने के लिए, तो ऑलरेडी आपका टीम गलत है. Anyone who is into competitive sports actually knows this. ठीक है? If you are afraid कि you're going to tell your teammate कि यार काम नहीं किया या फिर ये आइडिया खराब है, पसंद नहीं आ रहा है, and you are scared कि फ्रेंडशिप खत्म हो जाएगा, ब्रेकअप हो जाएगा, डिवोर्स हो जाएगा, तो टीम ही गलत है आपका. Right? You're already setting yourself up for failure because you'll not be able to handle the pressure of actually solving problems for real world problems and building a company. I made the same mistake as well. I started my company with 2 of my friends. I couldn't actually have a fight with them because मेरे को लग रहा था friendship खत्म हो जाएगा and stuff. वो तो वैसे भी हुआ. But it's just not the right team to work with. So stuff to keep in mind as we move forward. All of this is also going to be applicable to what you guys are working on. I realized something very important. You remember how I was technology centered in my design approach? When my first startup failed, it went me reconsidered this entire. I was like, wait, something is not right in my design philosophy. And I realized, ye kahani ka main hero was not the cyber cafe. It was not internet. It was not the technology. The main hero was someone else. Do you know who? The hero of the story was Bablu Bhaiya. Okay? Bablu Bhaiya was essentially the cyber cafe owner. He was the first person in that region to learn how to use an internet browser, to learn how to actually find courses, to get certifications, to use the internet for its intended purpose and teach it to youngsters like us. Without Bablu Bhaiya, none of this would have been possible. And that really made me realize and reconsider my approach and become human-centered in my design. Because it doesn't matter, right? Technology, pizza, internet, they're all incomplete without people. Solving problems for real people, building solutions with real people, that is the essence of entrepreneurship and product design. And it took me a while to figure this out.